5 triumph is heard, but only by the few. Author's note, many thanks to G.J. Mega for editing this. An excerpt from Memorable Muggle Mornings, The Undercover Wizard. Today I walked down the street of a Muggle town. It's amazing how efficient they are. While we have a spell for everything, they have a tool for everything. They have tools to fix things, tools to cook things, tools to make more tools. They have a contraption to mow their lawns more accurately than a cutting spell. They have these computers that can store the contents of 100 books within a tiny box, accessible by merely pushing a button. The inventions. Automatic light contained within glass bulbs, no spell required to light them. They have even found a way to make pictures move, called video. Muggles have come farther than we have ever dreamed. Their tools easily rival our spells. Why is this not being talked about? Muggles are smart, ingenious. No one seems to want to talk about how Muggle-borns are now statistically the smartest in the upcoming generation. They come to school with more book knowledge than most wizarding children and learn much faster. Teachers even say they perform better in school settings. 2 days previous, Rick was having a hard time. It was getting more difficult to stay interested in their mission. When he first joined the group, young and in a rough state, this place seemed like a godsend. The old man might be a little kooky with his crazy talk of witches and magic and potions, but it was a warm place to stay with free food. He could always leave any time. Somehow he began to believe in the odd technology of the wizards, and when he brought in his first real spellbook, he was ecstatic. Ecstatic enough to get a tattoo inked down his right shoulder. What a mistake. Rick was ready to leave. He already knew a guy who wanted full-time help moving boxes. He would be 16 soon, old enough to get a cheap apartment on the seedier side of town without being asked too many questions. How to tell the others, though? He had grown fond of Tiny and greatly respected Mr. Steele and Care. Mike wasn't much to miss with his bitter, sarcastic attitude, and the new boy, Harry. He was too odd, always bringing back the good stuff, never missing a hit. It made him jealous. It made him almost as petty as Mike at times, to his own surprise, and that wasn't someone he liked to be. And Hilary said she loved him. He had told her some things about Mr. Steele, enough to make her think the old man was as crazy as a bat. She still loved to hear stories about what theories the old man had come up with, and many a night they had spent making fun of the man who had taken Rick off the streets. At first he had felt mildly guilty, but then he realized that there was a real world out there. She would like him to move out, he was sure. Maybe they could be together. It was time to move on. Give up some space for another idealistic youngster to move in. He would talk to Mr. Steele in a few days once everything was in place. Seriously, magic. Time to grow up. Present, but it's not real. None of it is real. The first outburst, oddly enough, came from Rick. The boy turned and ran up the steps, not looking anyone in the eye. Everyone could still hear him muttering upstairs as he stood in shock. It's not. I know it's not. Mister, what is going on? Explain it to us. Explain it to Harry. Care spoke up finally as the seconds dragged on. His steady voice pulled everyone else out of their shock and back to the present. Care had seen the look on Harry's face and squelched his own feelings of betrayal and fear. Harry was scared to death, shocked to find himself to be one of the monsters they had been seeking so avidly. Harry wasn't a monster. Harry was just a boy, a skinny, looking-to-please boy who tried too hard sometimes and wouldn't hurt a fly. He hated wizards too. Sit down, all of you. Mr. Steele spoke up sternly, a smile still tugging at the corners of his mouth. Mike and Tiny sat right away, and for once the dark-haired boy had nothing mean to say. Care tried to help Harry sit without his wings touching the furniture, but jerked his hand back with a quick grunt when a steel feather sliced his palm. Ugh, he muttered, nursing his cut hand. Harry's eyes widened when he saw the blood dripping down, and he turned a shade paler than he was before. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. I don't know what's going on, I don't. Harry began to jabber in panic. Care quickly and gingerly gave Harry a hug. It was awkward, trying to find how to hold the smaller boy without hitting the steel wings, but Care figured it out somehow with grit and determination. He could feel tension slowly leaving Harry at the gesture. It's all right, it's okay. It doesn't matter. We will figure this out. We all will, together. This last was said with a pointed look towards Mike, who said nothing. Mr. Steele cleared his throat and sat in his normal chair. I first had the idea some years ago. For some time now, Mr. Steele had known that the only true way to solve this conundrum of the wizarding world would be to go to a wizard himself. However, Steele had no way of knowing what wizard, if any, would bother with a normal person. They would probably just turn him in. An adult would, anyway, which led him to a thought. There were wizarding children. There had to be. It would explain the children's gifts, toys, candy they had found. It was getting harder and harder to see the wizards as being evil. It seemed they were human just like him, only wrapped up in a secret society with dubious motives and technology. And now he was even beginning to doubt that. The books were too detailed, too diverse, some even too mundane, to be some secret code. The motives were all over the place, leading him to have no idea if there was a single, solitary purpose for wizards at all. Instead, it seemed more and more that there was actual magic at work. Real, true magic. And apparently not just anyone could use it. Only people that met a specific criterion could. What those criteria were he had no idea, nor how to find it out. But he had pieced together some information from various newspaper articles and books. Some wizards came from non-wizards. There was prejudice in the wizarding world against them, but they were still accepted. And these wizards were found as children, to be brought in and raised in wizarding society once they reached an acceptable age. Or 11 or 12, he thought, and if he could find a child younger than that, a wizarding child, one who did not know the rules, the laws, the spells, it might just work. Wait a minute, you took us in the off chance that we might be spies for you. Mike spoke incredulously from the sofa. Tiny just looked lost. Everything was finally beginning to sink into Harry. He was a wizard. He wasn't evil. He was a wizard. He could do spells. He was a wizard. Wizards were real, had real magic. He was a wizard. He could do magic. Harry ignored the argument, heating up in the room. He felt a smile beginning to grow on his face. He wasn't a freak after all. All those odd things that always happened around him could be explained. He could learn to heal people, to make things move. He could learn to fly. He could do anything he wanted with the right word. I can do magic. Harry realized he had said it out loud when the argument in the room suddenly went quiet. Can he, Mr. Steele? Can he really do all those things we've read about? That was Tiny, finally speaking up. He looked like it had taken all his bravery to speak. Tiny still wouldn't look at Harry directly. Mr. Steele started to nod and then stopped suddenly. It was as if a light switch was flipped. A serious look came over his face. Yes and no. Those things must be learned, taught. They have a school for it. But Harry, Mr. Steele ground to a halt. For the first time since the episode began, he looked haunted. That tattoo, it uses magic. I don't know much, but because of it, there will be some things you cannot do, maybe a lot of things. But it was the only way I knew of to know for sure, to find out before a child might be taken away. Mr. Steele looked pleadingly at Harry. Harry did not understand what he was trying to say. Mike broke in with a vicious look at both Harry and Mr. Steele. What he is trying to tell you, Skinny, is this wonderful magical tattoo is sucking up your magic. You might not have any left now, and the reason you have it is because of him. Harry did not know what to say. Sorrow broke upon him before he even realized how happy he had been before. Something was being stolen from him he did not even know he had, and Mike looked so happy about it. Mr. Steele looked torn, the full years of his age finally showing in the lines of his face. For once, everyone could see him as the old man that he was. Harry, this was for the best. It was never meant to be like this. I never even thought. When Kerr spoke up again, it was with a different conviction in his voice. Yeah, you didn't think it through. You didn't mean it to be this way, but it is, and you will help Harry fix it. He laid a hand on Mr. Steele's shoulder. We will see if he can do anything in those books, Mr. Steele. Might manage to do magic when the wings ain't out or something. Truth is, we know nothing. Those wizards will come calling, though, we know that. In what? 1 to 3 years from now doesn't give Harry much time to get one up on them, and we will need to think of a plan. You wanted a spy to tell you about the wizards. Well, now you got one. Kerr turned to Mr. Steele. What you going to do with him? Kerr asked. The question was a good one. Suddenly all eyes were focused on Mr. Steele. I'm leaving. The statement came from behind them. Rick stood there holding a hastily packed bag. I've got a place to stay, a job I can take. I won't say anything. I don't want anything to do with this. I'm done. This never happened. Rick forcefully belted out the last sentence and then walked past them and out of the room. They heard a door open and close. Mr. Steele stood slowly. Anyone else want nothing to do with this business? I admit the stakes have risen. We will be on the wizard's radar now, and we don't know when they might come for Harry here. Now's the time to leave. I'll help you set up somewhere else. I'll give you money and a place to stay." No one spoke. Finally, Mr. Steele let out a sigh. "Let's sleep on it. Make your decision tomorrow. In the morning, we will hammer out a plan. Harry." Harry looked at Mr. Steele, feeling bereft. "This is worth it. I know it is so." Mr. Steele assured him. Harry might have believed him if Mr. Steele had looked like he believed it himself. Daily Prophet Special Evening Edition Murder in Diagon Alley. By Thomas Hickle, one of the Daily Prophet's own columnists, has been found the victim of a grisly murder. Anthony Limpton, the hitherto unknown author behind the increasingly popular, mysterious Muggle Mornings, was found by upstanding witches of good report at the 3rd hour in the afternoon, in the alley between Knockturn and Penelluck. His body was in horrendous condition, spread-eagled and strung upside down by his feet, hanging due to the dark torture ritual, Crucia. There have been no known reports of this ritual being performed since the height of He Who Must Not Be Named's reign of terror. The murderer is still at Aura's assured us that they will keep us informed of any relevant leads they gain to the killer's whereabouts. There are myriad motives for this dastardly crime. Popular opinion is that Limpton's writing had begun to annoy many prominent citizens of the wizarding world, including multiple members of the Wisengamot. Limpton's column was started almost exactly 1 year ago when the wizard decided to go undercover in the Muggle world. This experience was to last 1 year, during which the wizard would live as a Muggle and report back. This column gained popularity for its witty prose and funny encounters with clueless Muggles. However, most recently the column had become controversial due to its recently developed pro-Muggle stance. Limpton himself had just visited the ministry to begin lobbying for support to change what he considered blood purist laws that discriminate against Muggle-borns and their parents. Due to Limpton's various articles, Muggle awareness has been raised exponentially. Some wizards have begun to realize that Muggles may have something to offer wizarding kind. Others are even more concerned after reading of Muggle weapons and social policies. It is with little doubt that this author states that Limpton has left his mark on the wizarding community of Britain. For better or worse, only time can tell. The Daily Prophet will mourn the loss of a distinguished columnist. Funeral and service times will be posted within a week. When Harry entered his room after a tense and quiet moment, Tiny was waiting. The younger boy still would not meet his eyes, preferring to look at the floor. "I'm going to move into Rick's room, to give us more space." In the morning, Tiny's words seemed to fill the space between them. Harry could read between the lines. Tiny was afraid. At least, that's all he thought it was. Their friendship would never be the same. "That's all right. I understand." Harry tried to smile. Tiny nodded, then climbed into bed and slipped under the covers. After a moment's hesitation, Harry turned and went back out of the room and into the common area. He turned the chair around and straddled the seat, leaving room for his wings. When he heard the shuffle of feet, he glanced up to see Care sitting down across from him. The other boy had taken the news the best. Care never once seemed to doubt Harry's motives. He didn't seem to be waiting for Harry to jump up and start spelling the hell out of the room. Harry felt he was his one friend in this entire mess that had become his life. Right when things were going well and Harry was being accepted, something had to come up and ruin it. "We need to do something about those wings." Care's voice brought Harry out of his thoughts. Harry tried to smile. "I'm not sure how to make them go away, or if I can." Care shook his head. "I saw them come out. I saw them before, too. They were a perfectly good tattoo. I bet they can go back that way. As it is, you can barely walk around the house with them out like that. And how on earth are you going to sleep?" That last had been one of Harry's more pressing questions as the night wore on. The dratted things were getting heavy when Harry just leaned down. He could only imagine how they would feel if he was laying down. Not to mention the sharp feathers would cut the mess out of his bed and anything else they came into contact with. And what about pajamas? They aren't too heavy when I'm standing up straight, but they kind of pull at the skin when I lean over. And well, the feathers are sharp. Well, you knew that. I kind of contemplated sleeping sitting up. Look, let's try something. When the wings came out, you were upset. What were you thinking? They didn't just sprout out because you were upset, or they would have went away on their own. So I think somehow you called them out, and now you need to let them go. Harry thought hard. He could remember feeling overwhelmed. The threats from Mike and the betrayal from Tiny and Care had been hard to face. He had just wanted to get away. No, he had wanted to fly away. I was thinking of flying, Harry exclaimed with excitement. I was thinking of flying right before they came out. Care gave a wild smile in response. He then stood up and gestured Harry to do so as well. Well, knowing that is half the battle, I guess. Now, what is the opposite of flying? Perhaps you should think of walking, or maybe running, or maybe focus on the feeling of having your feet on the ground. Harry felt a little overwhelmed, but he nodded resolutely and closed his eyes firmly. He could do this. He focused on his wings and where they met his skin. The feathers brushed his back gently. One of the first things he had learned was that the razor-sharp edges felt like fine velvet to his own hands. It seemed that his tattoo had a funny idea about what sharp meant and who it would apply to. Magic. It didn't seem to obey any laws of common sense. Harry shook his head and tried to focus. Okay, so there are my wings. Go away. Go back. Retreat. Vamoose. Abracadabra. Relax. I can see you tensing up from here. Care's voice was soothing. Harry nodded quickly and brought his mind back to focus. He thought about his dream of swooping through the sky. The freedom to soar over the world and its troubles. The strings of light. That must have been his magic. Harry thought hard about it, of the light that had flowed through his veins. As if opening a door, Harry was suddenly blinded by the light that moved through himself. It was everywhere. The light pooled forth from his heart and streamed throughout his veins, running from head to toe, and out through his back into each and every feather. It seemed spread thin, not as prevalent as it had been. Harry suddenly realized that this was his magic, and that the tattoo was taking what would normally be spread out throughout himself and running it through his wings. The wings took up so much of the light. Harry almost wept as he remembered Mike's words earlier about losing his magic because of the tattoo. How was he to bring the magic back inside himself? All the books said wizards used wands to cast magic. They had to say specific words and make specific motions in order to make anything happen. Some few books went into more advanced theory, but Harry had never truly bothered to read them. He did, however, remember a few references to wandless magic, and the wand use did not explain Harry's own accidental magic when he was a child. He had made things happen without a wand. He could do this too. Harry pulled at the light. Nothing happened. He tried to take a deep breath, could see the light flare ever so slightly, but when he let it out again, the light went back to normal. No change, so breathing didn't do anything. The light followed his blood veins. So was there blood in his wings? No, that's irrelevant. His feet are on the floor. He has no need to fly. He doesn't want to fly, but he does. He wants to right now. Harry felt his wings ruffle and let out a grunt of annoyance before opening his eyes and glaring at Care. It's not working. They don't want to go. Care scoffed. Are you really trying? Do you really want them to go? Harry balled his hands into fists, turning red. Of course I do, and I am trying. It's hard. Care folded his hands, raising an eyebrow. So you can't do it because it's hard. I understand. It's okay. I probably couldn't do it either. Harry wanted to scream. He knew what Care was doing. Reverse psychology, as Rick liked to say, and it was working. Harry knew if the places were reversed, Care could do it. He could do anything. Harry was just a freak, and now a freak with wings, cool-looking wings. Harry gave Care a glare and got a smile back in return. Then, with an offended sniff, Harry closed his eyes, then on second thought, carefully sat down on the floor. He brought the light back up in his mind, and then tried to remember that first dream he had had, when he was lying on the table at the tattooist's place. He had stood before a mirror, admiring his wings. The light had been then just as it was now, spread out thin. Harry imagined himself reeling the light back in as he would reel up the water hose in Ant's garden. Turn, pause, turn, pause, turn. The light faded first from the tines on the feathers, drawing itself back into the quills. Turn, pause, turn. He reeled the light into the hollow bones. Were the bones made of steel? At that random thought, Harry lost his concentration, and the light sprang back into the wings. Harry felt as if he had dropped a measuring tape that was fully distended, and the tape had snapped back super fast into the ball it was rolled out of. No, the sound of clapping made Harry open his eyes. Care was grinning from ear to ear. You almost did it. The wings, they were getting smaller, maybe drawing in a little bit, like slow motion. Try again. Harry didn't say anything. He felt a little out of breath. With a sigh, he closed his eyes again. Okay, so the water hose analogy worked a little bit. What else could be reeled in? An anchor, a fishing line. A parachute, no, that gets unfurled. Wrong direction. Harry tried to think. A kite. Yes, his wings were a kite he had let loose to fly, but now it was time to go home again. The kite had to be put away. You cannot fly kites inside. His heart was a reel, the light the string, and his wings the kite. It was time to reel it in. Mentally, Harry pictured the light looping back into his body. Bit by bit, the light coiled around the pool of his heart. It went much faster this time, the light drawing into the quills, then the bones, then his back. The wings seemed to now be made wholly of light, getting smaller and smaller. His heart felt so full, ready to burst. He was full of energy. He could run a marathon. Suddenly, Harry saw something else happening. It was not just the light in the wings being reeled in. All the light in his body was wrapping around and around his heart. Would he, too, disappear? With this wild thought, terror ran through him, and Harry tried to jump up only to get tangled in his feet and fall flat on his face. He looked up to the sound of laughter. Care was doubled over, face bright red. That was so funny. You sit up and lunge, and your feet are crossed, and now you look like a broken baby doll. That last brought on new gales of laughter. Harry tried to get angry, but couldn't. He felt himself starting to laugh too as he carefully untangled himself and stood up. The weight on his back sobered him up, though. The wings were still present. What had he done wrong? Care noticed the look on his face. They were gone, Harry. I mean, like completely gone. But right before you lunged, they just snapped back out. Whoosh. Harry sighed as he tried to find words for it. Everything was just so confusing. I got scared. I felt like I was, I don't know, about to burst open. It wasn't just my wings being pulled in, but my whole body. It's hard to explain. I don't think I can explain. It's okay. Why don't you try again? Third time's the charm, Care said, his smile not faltering in the slightest. Care's cheery face and words helped steady his racing heart. He could do this. He had to do this. He had no choice. He couldn't go around with wings everywhere. He couldn't leave this building until he had this under control. And he was tired, and he wanted to sleep. And he wanted to be able to do magic. He would reel in the magic in his wings and wrap it up in his heart. And if the rest of the magic in his body wanted to go there, well, what harm could it do? He would jump that hurdle when he got to it. This was his magic, and he would make it do what he wanted it to do. Harry grabbed a hold of his mental reel again and began to spin it faster and faster. The light seemed to flow out of his wings like water now, getting smaller and smaller even as the light got brighter and brighter in his body. With a final heavy pull, sweat beginning to fall down his face, all the light was inside his chest. His felt lighter, his chest full. He stood up in one fluid motion, as if he was moving through water. The magic inside him seemed to thrum before it settled. With a lazy sway, Harry opened his eyes slowly, feeling like gravity was no longer holding him down. Wow. Care's quiet word brought Harry's eyes to his face. Care looked shocked. Harry tried to smile, but the emotion just was not there. He felt so peaceful, as if with a mere wave of his hand he could change the world. Maybe he could. Look, you did it, Harry, you did it. Care's words drifted off as Harry failed to respond. Harry closed his eyes, light surrounding him, pulling him down and under. It was so hard to find words to speak. He was too full of magic. He had to get rid of it somehow. Had to spread it out so he would have room to think and feel again. He looked down at himself and was almost blinded by the light coming from his chest. It was like a star, like the sun. Harry grasped at any idea, any way to tamper down on that light. It was as if he was the sun, the brightest star of all. It was bright because it was so close to the earth. He needed to move it farther away. He needed to make other stars. But where? His mind sluggishly tried to think. Became aware of hands moving him, lifting him up, and when had he fallen anyhow? He latched back onto the one idea that had seemed to run through his mind. Stars. The magic was like the sun, because it was one and so big and so together, and it was meant to be spread out. How on earth does he spread it out? Time seemed to have stopped completely as Harry watched the magic slowly pulse. He tried to remember how the night sky looked. The darting of lights that spread across the sky, some bright, some dull. The moon that reflected light back from the sun. None of this was helping. Harry felt a sense of urgency come upon him. Somehow he knew that he was running out of time. He desperately grabbed at the light with his mind and pulled away a mass of stringy lights and shoved them in the first place he thought of, his hands. Almost immediately he began to feel better. The sense of urgency faded, and he was aware that his entire body was stiff, as if he had been laying stock still for hours. Harry stepped back from his body, observing the light. Now the sun in his chest shone a bit dimmer, and in both hands small blots of light shone. They were all connected by a strand of spider-thin light. Okay, what next? His head. Harry grabbed another time, this time trying to pull even more away. He gently put this light right in the center of his forehead. As he did, he noticed something else. Right where his scar should be, there was a hole, or something like it. He held his magic back from it, confused. It wasn't like a real hole, like one in the ground. More, it was like the absence of light completely. It absorbed magic at a slow pace, the same way a black hole in space absorbed light. At that thought, Harry jerked his magic back from it and tried to think of somewhere else to put it. He wanted none of it near that black hole. It was too bad he couldn't set some aside specifically for his wings. Harry thought back to that dream once again and remembered how at the end the light wings had curled around his heart, resembling a winged ball. Like in that game the wizards liked to play, quid something or other. But could Harry make that? The light seemed to want to coalesce into a round object every time it was released. Harry then had a thought and knew he could make it work. He would put the magic in the tattoo. It would connect itself automatically to the main light. He gently, evenly, let the light stream and dart into the elegant lines of the tattoo. The light adhered to it the way it had to his hands, following every line and curve. Before Harry knew it, the light really did resemble light wings spread across his back as it had in the dream. The feeling of being full now receded completely. Harry gave a last look at his body. It was much different than the way it started. Only his chest, hands, and back glowed with light. All the other places were very dim, and the darkest spot being his head. He wasn't sure what this might mean for his ability to practice magic, but it was the best he could do. Already he felt exhaustion coming upon him. Darkness was pulling him down fast, away from the light. Harry used all his effort to crack a single eyelid open and see the worried face of Care hovering above him. Then they closed, and he saw his magic, twinkling in the darkness, bright and scattered. He spared one last fuzzy thought as unconsciousness took him under. The night sky had never looked so beautiful. Tilda review please. 6. Some, too busy in their wordly games. Author's note. I've tweaked canon a bit in this story. All acceptance letters will be sent on the child's 11th birthday, regardless of when it falls in the year. This will be part of the reason Hermione knows so much more, as her birthday is in September, so she has much more time than the average student to study. This also spreads out the burden on the teachers who meet personally with all the Muggle-born students and parents. This is a little insight to what is going on elsewhere. An interlude, if you will, from the main storyline. I also did not want anyone to be confused. Harry is 9.5 years old when he gets his tattoo. He has been with Steele since he was a little older than 8. He is a child, and children are foolish, trusting little things. It was perhaps the most disturbing scene the man had walked in on since the darkest months of the war. The old man, dressed in a garishly blue night robe, sat slumped at his desk. In his wrinkled hands, he held the shattered pieces of what once was a prominent instrument on his desk. His voice did not seem to belong to one of the self-assured leaders of the wizarding world. It was barely above a whisper. I've failed, Severus. The newly arrived visitor, Severus, closed his eyes for a moment, making sure his expression did not betray the pain he felt. The words had hit too close to his heart. He walked into the room, softly closing the door behind him. The trembling hand he sat in one of the 2 chairs positioned in front of the desk. For a short while he said nothing as he tried to organize his thoughts. Can we be sure? Is there not some other reason? Severus asked. His voice, too, lacked conviction. What else? This is tied directly into his magic. Nothing short of an extreme accidental magic event brought on by a life or death situation could have caused the anomalies it experienced leading up to the failure. And to break, no, explode. The old man lowered his head to one hand, tears beginning to fall from underneath the rim of his wide glasses. I place the blame only on myself. I made the decisions. For the greater good, for his greater good. I'm getting old, Severus, too old. Once the public knows, I will be the one to take the fall. I went against the wishes of his parents. I did not put enough precautions in place. But who could have possibly foreseen? Lily. Lily could foresee it. She knew her sister. She knew the boy should not go to that house. Severus cut in. He could not care much if his words were salt on a fresh wound. He couldn't stop himself from answering that question. He was in turmoil, the unpaid life debt aching in his chest, for what was left of the wonderful, bright girl to perish so early in his life. It was hard to pity the older man in the face of his own grief, the weight of it pressing down on his shoulders. The stark reminder of the shattered monitoring device only brought on his ire. None of us agreed to this, Severus snapped again. No, we downright argued with you, we said. He stopped as the old man began to shake his head in a slow, steady rhythm. I know, I know. The quiet words put a halt to the argument before it could truly heat up. How had it come to this? Around a year earlier, Tilda, when Dumbledore invited Mrs. Figg over for their yearly tea over at his office, he was not expecting anything particularly earth-shattering. Perhaps some more news of how much Harry was growing, how the Neasles were being mischievous, how the neighborhood was doing this or that or the other. Arabella Figg, a reputable Neasel breeder and squib, had been a part of Dumbledore's wartime vigilante resistance group, the Order of the Phoenix. When young Harry Potter was to be dropped off to live with relatives in the middle of Surrey, she was the most natural pick to live nearby and keep an eye on things. Things had gone well the last few years, though she reported that Harry was not particularly bright academically and did not get out of the house much. Harry also seemed to have an avid interest in gardening, which Dumbledore found interesting, as none of his parents or grandparents had had that inclination. They met once or twice a year for tea and conversation. Mrs. Figg did like to talk. Dumbledore helped Mrs. Figg from the fireplace as its green flames dimmed, leading her over to a comfy plush chair. After the usual greetings and how-are-you-do's, he poured some tea in a small saucer. Sugar? Oh, you know not. Mrs. Figg smiled at the customary question and her own answer. It was always the same with that Albus Dumbledore and his sweets. For a short while they covered the weather and the Neasles and the latest sock in Dumbledore's collection. Then a serious look came over Mrs. Figg's face. The scolding question she asked next would be the start of many long days searching and longer nights questioning. Why did you not tell me you had placed Harry with other relatives? I can understand country life is good for a child, and he did not have many friends in Surrey, but still, I could have used a little notice. I mean to come home one day and find, Albus, what's wrong? Mrs. Figg noticed that the older wizard had gone stark white. He slowly put down his tea, all joviality gone. It suddenly occurred to her that she had made a mistake in assuming Dumbledore was behind the move. His voice broke the silence. Tell me everything. With trembling fingers, she did. Arabella Figg had noticed the last week that she had not seen Harry at all. His usual gardening was undone, and she had not seen him leave for school either. Finally, thinking that perhaps he had come down with a severe stomach bug, she contrived an excuse to knock on the door of number 4, Privet Drive. Petunia Dursley opened the door with a sickly sweet smile. What can I do for you, Arabella? Oh, Petunia, I have been most unwell of late. I was just coming over to let you know that I will not be able to watch young Harry for the next few days, at least. Arabella tried to smile as she carefully glanced around the thin woman to catch a glimpse inside the house. Petunia shifted her weight, her smile brightening. Oh, that is no problem at all. In fact, just recently we were informed of some relatives in the country who wish to take young Harry in. Most marvelous, really. Harry will have a much more fun time with his other cousins his age, and the whole countryside to explore. Why, Dudley himself would probably love to go visit them sometime. Arabella's forehead furrowed slightly at the words, and Petunia didn't look her in the eye. Mrs. Dursley did not look exactly sure of that last statement. For a second, Arabella wondered what Dumbledore was up to, for she had not known of any other relatives. However, it would do that child a lot of good to be made to get out of the house and play outside. Not to mention that round Dudley boy looked downright mean on the best of days. Arabella made up her mind as she said polite goodbyes and walked slowly back to her own house. Harry would be just fine, if not better, in the country. She would give Dumbledore a piece of her mind next time she saw him, however. He should have at least sent her a letter with the good news. That is all you know. Relatives in the country, and not seen since. Mrs. Figg nodded. Dumbledore abruptly stood. I'm sorry to cut our tea short, but this is most urgent news. I will allow you what I find out. It was an obvious dismissal. Mrs. Figg stood and ambled over to the fireplace. As she threw the flue powder in and spoke her destination, she glanced back on last time at Dumbledore. He was slowly taking a glowing blue instrument off his shelf and placing it gently in the middle of his desk. Drake Dumbledore had one obvious choice of who best to look into the situation as he scribbled off a brisk note. "Come to my office immediately. Urgent. Dumbledore." He went to Fawkes and gave him the note. "Go to Severus, Fawkes, quickly." When he quickly walked into the office barely 10 minutes later, Dumbledore wasted no time and got right to the point. "Harry is missing, Severus. Mrs. Fig thought I was behind the disappearance. I need you to immediately go to Surrey and investigate with your particular skills, whatever is necessary." The dark-haired man spared a second on shock before he cleared his mind and began to set his thoughts on what he needed to know. Any details? His aunt informed Arabella that Harry was sent to relatives in the country. "That is all we know. It happened perhaps a month or so ago." Dumbledore answered quickly. Severus nodded, his mind already at work. "And if he is truly at these relatives, will he be safe to stay there? I know of no other blood relatives to Lily, and that is required for the protection spell to work. Harry must be brought back to the Dursleys immediately. Already, the protections will be fading. It is only a matter of time before the boy is found by wizarding folk. He is too noticeable and does not know to hide. He knows nothing, Severus. I would like to keep it that way, if at all possible." For a second, Severus considered arguing. They had been over this many times before, however. He knew it was pointless. He looked at Dumbledore's stern form and asked one last question. "And if the Dursleys will not take him back, I cannot think they want him if they gave him away so freely. They will have no choice in the matter. They know better than to protest." The older man's voice brooked no argument. Severus did not bother with goodbyes before he turned and left the room. Dumbledore wanted haste, and he had said to do anything necessary. It had been a long while since the old man had asked for such things. He hoped it was not a sign of things to come. With a crack of apparition, Severus disappeared from outside the school grounds. When Petunia opened the door, she was met with dark eyes. All she got was the impression of dark hair and darker robes before she tried to back up. To escape those dark, dark eyes, she found it impossible to look away from. The door slammed shut. She fell into darkness. Petunia was still cleaning the kitchen when Vernon walked in that fateful day. "Pet, sit down. We need to talk about all this." Vernon spoke heavily. The anger still boiled under his surface, but now he mostly grimly determined. Petunia sat at the kitchen table, and Vernon sat across from her before reaching forward and taking her hands. "I know how you feel about your sister's son. I know you're too tender-hearted to give him up, and I know that. Letter frightened you, but I have a solution. It said relatives, right? Well, why not my relatives? In the country, they never could have children of their own. The boy can help out much better there. He will be appreciated, and he won't have as much ability to do harm. Not enough time to get into trouble." Vernon spoke earnestly, looking deep into her eyes. Petunia quaked inside. The dratted boy was so much like her sister. Good Lily, great Lily, sweet Lily, such beautiful green eyes, Lily, such pretty hair, so smart. She had hated growing up with such a perfect sister. When she could not even justify hating, the girl had been so freaking nice. And that's what she turned out to be, a freak, a dreadful little freak. With her perfect school, her perfect friends, and her perfect husband, her perfect little son, a son who wanted to please everyone so badly, just like his mother. She hated him. Petunia had never heard of Vernon having relatives in the country. She did not question him. What was there to gain? She would tell herself Harry was better off there. She would do anything to get the evil reminder of her childhood out of her house. At a nod, Vernon almost turned giddy with excitement. Petunia came back to herself sitting on the couch in her living room. The sun had moved further down the sky. She found herself facing the door, her eyes locked on it. She couldn't move or speak. Her eyes frantically moved about the room, and as if on cue a dark shadow moved. Dark robes, hooded. My God, the letter was right. They had been found. With Harry no longer with blood relatives, the protections must have failed. She had always thought, deep down, that the threatening letter was just a hoax, a sham to make them keep the boy. To love him so that they in turn would be protected. What a crock. This entire thing was the boy's fault. They should have gotten rid of him sooner. She should have listened to Vernon from the beginning. Vernon, he would be home from work soon. She had to warn him, she had to. But she couldn't. She was trapped under some spell. Her eyes locked on the door again. Oh, Vernon, what had they done? Severus watched the still form of Lily's sister, her thoughts bubbling out in every direction frantically. The woman had been of very little help, and her poisonous thoughts still lingered in his mind. He had never known just how much hate she held for her sister, or perhaps it had merely grown with time, he thought to himself, constantly reminded of her bitter past by Harry's presence, by a situation she felt was outside her control. And of course, there was Harry. Harry, little Harry Potter, who was so very much like Lily. Severus was not sure he ever would have seen it before, but looking through the mind of Petunia had been eye-opening in more than one way. Severus would never be able to see Harry as merely James's son again. He had to find him, and if he found out that these relatives had laid a single finger on the boy. He heard a car door slam and heavy footsteps. It was time. Vernon was looking forward to a good snack. It had been a long day at work, and an even longer commute. His new job had him driving farther and farther, but it was worth the pay. He hoped to be promoted again soon, as he was in good standing with his boss. His thoughts revolved around work as he opened the door and saw Petunia sitting still and straight on the couch, looking straight into his eyes. "Pet, what's—" He didn't get to complete the sentence. A dark red spell caught him in the side, and his body froze up. He couldn't move or speak. Frantic thoughts ran through his mind. A robed man strode around from beside him, dark eyes focused on his. This shouldn't take long. The softly spoken words were ominous. Vernon lost himself in his memories. He had convinced Petunia. She had caved without even an argument, which told him that she had been hoping for him to do this all along. She did not even question him about his mysterious country relatives. Well, no matter. The dratted boy would be out of their hair soon enough. What a freak. Magic, such a silly word. He would be glad to get it out of his house for good. The boy had been nothing but trouble, a drain on their lives, their finances, and now even their health. Poor Dudley could have had a heart attack, and Petunia, well, no matter. The boy would be gone for good now. Not that he had any intention of bringing him to any relatives in the country. No, London should be just fine. Middle of downtown, even better. Rage came upon him, knocking him out of his thoughts as a murderous presence became known to him, a spider inside his mind, hairy legs stretched out and spinning a web, reeling in his very self. More memories flashed by, faster than he could live them. Vernon ordering the appliances, thanking the workers, making the freak clean up, taking the freak by the hand, the freak's little questions, pointing into the oversized box. "Hurry up, freak, before I whip you first." Those green eyes staring up at him as he closed the box and taped it quickly. Such murderous rage. It washed over his thoughts like a red flood, even as it washed up more memories and left a sickly bitter taint behind. Vernon getting the neighbor to help put Harry in the car, driving through London, whistling a happy tune. Happy, happy, furious. Dropping the box in a little back alley, looking dark and infrequently used. A flash of a road sign as he got back into his car. Hoped the freak was never found. He hoped he died. Vernon was scarcely aware of the outside world when he came back to himself. His thoughts were fuzzy, mixed up, incoherent, torn from their moorings like boats lost in a storm. He couldn't think. His mind felt shattered into a billion cracked pieces. He was only vaguely aware of the next word he heard before his mind once more dissolved, but this time into a screaming agony of pain. Crucio. I am not proud. I also do not regret it. The man looked proud, Dumbledore thought to himself, regardless of his words. Severus sat up straight, his chin raised, his face pale. He also looked scared to death. That his first words to him had been those worried him. What was going on? What happened, Severus? Where is Harry? Where? Who knows? Those sick, twisted muggles have abandoned him. Abandoned him to die, Albus. They hated him. They made his life miserable. They are the worst sort of human beings if they are human at all. To treat Lily's son that way. Severus ended his rant in a whispery snarl, out of breath, his chest heaving. The man looked ready to fall apart by the second. Dumbledore was shocked. He had hoped with the talk of relatives that Harry was unharmed, merely misplaced, easily returned. What had Severus found? The man looked in no state to give details. He met Severus's eyes and waited just a second. The man's nod was all he needed. He slipped into his mind with the skill of a master. Severus was good at what he did, but Dumbledore was great. When he finally looked away, he felt sick. Only the calm, glowing blue of the talisman on his desk settled his heart. Harry was still alive and still well. He just needed to be found. Severus was slumped in his chair now, looking bleak. The man had used an unforgivable, more than once. What he had done in the heat of his anger was punishable by death, should be punished, but Dumbledore would not be that one. He would turn a blind eye, as he had done many, many times before. So many dark nights, so many dark times. But they would need everyone if they were to find Harry. He needed the Order of the Phoenix. It could not get to the public that Harry was missing. Dark wizards might, and probably would, take advantage of the situation. Harry could be found by the wrong sort. He needed stealth, and to be quick. His group was the obvious answer. Dumbledore stood and walked over to Fox's glowing red form. "You know what to do, Fox. Summon them here." Fox nodded, and with a flash of flame disappeared. Dumbledore tried to find some piece of comfort within him to give to Severus, but could not. He would not rest until the boy was found. Harry had to be found. The wizarding world depended on it. A dark-skinned man casually left the police station. It had only taken a week to thoroughly search every station in London. Muggles were quick to explain away anything odd, and an easy memory charm had sufficed on all other occasions. No sign of the boy. Kingsley had left another notice to be on the lookout for a young runaway. Perhaps it would be enough. Minerva cursed to herself in a decidedly Scottish manner. That old coot. She had told him. She had. Her stomping steps carried her out of yet another orphanage. Harry was in none of them. It was as if the boy had disappeared from the face of the earth. Or maybe merely from London. There were no adoption papers for a boy his age and description either. Minerva cursed again, before with a crack of apparition she disappeared from the street. Remus rubbed his eyes with one hand. He was so tired. Only a few days after the full moon, and to be hit with the news that his best friend's son was abandoned on the streets of London. As one of the only members with intimate knowledge of Muggle lifestyles, not to mention the ability to use a computer, he had been the obvious choice to search both the streets and the internet for Harry's whereabouts, and nothing had been found. Where was the boy? Did he never go outside? Not that a crowded city was the best place for a werewolf to sniff around. Too many other sights and smells and sounds. Remus shook his head, and then refocused his attention on the computer screen in front of him. He had to find something. He had to, for James' sake if not his own. The third meeting the Order of the Phoenix had after Harry's disappearance was a decidedly depressing affair. No leads, no hints, not even a sniff. Every public office had been searched, almost every street, and nothing. Harry was either staying indoors or had left London completely. Dumbledore's instrument proved he was alive, at least. Dumbledore, do you not think we have done enough? There is nowhere left to search. The boy, he must be gone. We know he's healthy, being taken care of. Why not let the letter do our work? This came from an older woman in the back. Mrs. Longbottom was getting on in years, but her mind was still going strong. She wasn't afraid to say what everyone else was thinking. Absolutely not. That would be 2 years from now, at least. Anything could happen. Severus' abrupt outburst was expected. It had been a shock at the first meeting for him to display any sort of affection for the son of his worst childhood rival, but by now it was old news. Augusta Longbottom's idea had been brought up in the very first meeting as a last-ditch option. The acceptance letter for all wizarding and muggle-born children would go out their 11th birthday before the start of term. It relied on a magic that could not be tampered with and was impervious to outside reading. Names and addresses would only become visible once the letter was to be sent out. Unfortunately for Harry and them, his 11th birthday would come only a month before term started. Not much time to prepare, and a long wait to find out his location. Was there not another option? Dumbledore sat heavily in his chair. "I'm afraid you are right, Augusta." He waved his arm, interrupting Severus before he could go off on another rant. "The Order is now disbanded once more. I will assign 2 members to keep tabs on London. I will notify you all of anything that comes up. Keep your eyes and ear open. Dismissed." At the last word, Dumbledore stood and walked from the room. He ignored the raised voices he left behind him. There was nothing more to do. No stone had been left unturned. It was now a waiting game. Remus would continue searching the Muggle world, and Severus would keep an eye on the wizarding side of things. It was all he could hope for, that one day the boy would turn up on his own. "Oh, Harry, I have wronged you so." It was only a year later, and a year and a half before Harry's 11th birthday, that the instrument began to act erratic. He had woken in the night to the flashes of light. When he quickly went into his office, What he saw was the normally constant glow of the monitoring device changing. It flickered back and forth. Something was wrong. He quickly summoned Severus, but as soon as he got there, the device had gone back to a steady glow. He shook his head and explained to Severus, then dismissed the man back to bed. The next few hours, he kept his eyes locked on the device. It had been something he had made just after Harry had been placed at the Dursleys. It had required a few drops of blood to become active, focused on a particular magical signature. It was a round orb, transparent and smoky, much like a gypsy ball, he supposed. A normal glass ball, until it was infused with magic and blood. The life is in the blood. That idea had long permeated different religions and cults throughout the world, and it was no less true in science. Without blood, living creatures would die. Blood carried about the body the means of life. Oxygen and nutrients were delivered to cells, and waste taken away. Magic was no different. It flowed through a wizard's body as naturally as breathing. In fact, it was a topic that many a wizard had studied, including Dumbledore himself, in relation to dragon blood. As the wizard breathed in and oxygen began to flow through the body, a wizard's heart converted this to magic. And from the heart pumped all the magic throughout the body. A wand would help focus that magic in a particular hand of their choice. Even a staff or other magical object would suffice as a focus. A wizard, with much practice and patience, could even use the focused magic in a hand to create a variation of wandless magic. It was a rare feat, one that few wizards would even bother with. Too much effort was required to move magic about the body. Dumbledore had even researched various Asian tribes, who learned to focus magic through the soles of their feet. Magic that was expended would gradually filter back into the body as the wizard breathed. The magic in the blood also helped keep wizards from getting sick. So many benefits from magic. This device worked by monitoring Harry's magical level. The glow would be brightest when Harry was saturated with magic, and dimmest as the magic was at its lowest point. For the device to die completely would mean Harry's magic was also gone completely. A wizard whose magic was completely lost was not breathing. They were dead. Harry must be performing some extraordinary feat of magic based on the level of fluctuation involved. What was odd was for it to flash at all. Usually, the device would go dim in spurts and then gradually get brighter as magic returned. How would Harry be losing magic, then gaining it back immediately? It practically stank of some form of dark ritual. A blood ritual, perhaps. Then a replenishing potion. Where exactly was Harry at to have access to such things? Was he already in the hands of their enemy? He did not know what to think. Finally, as morning crept into the room, he wearily stumbled back to bed. When he rose some hours later, the device still looked fine. He went down to the great hall for lunch. Severus gave him an inquiring look, to which Dumbledore shook his head with a reassuring smile. They would meet later tonight to discuss the possibilities. For now, another day at school. When Dumbledore returned to his office after dinner, it was to a sight that made his heart stop. The device was barely glowing at all. He rushed over, collapsing in his chair as he pulled it to him. The glowing, transparent ball was so dim the light could barely be seen at all. The old wizard's heart was pounding a mile a minute. For almost an hour he sat, afraid to take his eyes off it. There was no change, not even the gradual increase he was expecting to take place. What had Harry done? A chilling realization gripped his heart not long after that, or what had been done to him. When the flash came, it was so bright that Dumbledore was blinded for a few seconds. As quick as it came, it vanished. Dumbledore was shocked for a second. What in Merlin's name? He leaned back, blinking his eyes quickly. His mind, usually throwing millions of scenarios to play, could not think of one to cause such a reaction. No spell could, no ritual could, not that he knew of. The next flash was just as staggering, and for a second a high-pitched whine emitted from the device. Dumbledore was at his wit's end. The amount of magic. It was almost like the flash was showing Harry's magic at a level 10 times what it should be. It was much too much for the device to monitor. The monitor was meant to gradually increase as the child grew older and his own magic grew with him. His magic would keep getting stronger until he reached his magical maturity at age 15. After that, only major milestones, inheritances, and magical rituals could increase the amount of magic at a wizard's disposal. For an increase like that, the monitor would break, unable to keep up with the sudden expansion. It was an unlucky thought. No sooner had it passed through his mind than a final, blinding flash illuminated his office. The wine was now a roar, and the walls rattled. There were several crashing noises, and Dumbledore could feel the instrument heating up under his fingers. He quickly pushed away from his desk, and no sooner had he done so than a resounding, splintering crash echoed in his ears. As his eyes slowly adjusted to the decreased light, he could see the instrument in many shattered pieces across his desk. He had failed. There would be no making another device. No blood to tie it to. Their last monitor to Harry's well-being was gone. Who knows if Harry had survived such a magical onslaught? The stress it would put on the body. And Dumbledore had no idea what could have brought it on. He had failed. That thought ran over and over through his mind. When Severus entered, they were the first words he said. Their truth echoed in his soul. I am not going to inform the public. About his disappearance, about what we know, none of it. I don't want you telling anyone of this either. The Order does not need to know. How can you say that? Don't they deserve to know they can stop looking now, that their savior might be dead? The truth is, we do not know. We know nothing. Harry might have survived. Only the school roster will tell us now. Severus leaned back at that, glancing over at an open book on a pedestal. Names had already appeared there for the next semester. This did not calm the younger wizard, however, and it did not surprise Dumbledore. The man's trust in him had been shaken ever since Harry's disappearance. And if he does not get a letter, if he does and does not show up, if he is moved before we can find him, Severus asked. All things we will deal with in time. Make plans, Severus. The Order must be ready to move as soon as he turns 11. If, once the name appears, we may only have moments to grab him. If he is with another wizard, which seems to be the case, they will know that we are looking. One thing is on our side. The letters will keep getting sent until they are read by the intended. If Harry does not see his letter, we can keep track of him. Not many know of this phenomenon. It was meant as a safeguard from overzealous or doubting muggle parents. Severus merely nodded. His face was bleak. What are the chances, Albus? What is the hope? There is always hope, my boy. And if when we find young Harry, we will never lose track of him again. I will not fail a second time. Dumbledore's words echoed in the silent room. His hands tightened around the fragments left of the orb. He made himself that silent vow. He would not fail again. Review, please. 7. To notice the brightest light. Author's note. Many thanks to G.J. Mega for editing this. Words strain, crack, and sometimes break under the burden, under the tension, slip, slide, perish, decay with imprecision, will not stay in place, will not stay still. T.S. Eliot, when Harry groggily opened his eyes that morning, it took him a while to focus his thoughts. Everything seemed hazy. Oh, he reached across and fumbled on his glasses before sitting up. Only then did it hit him that he had been laying on his back. This meant the wings were still gone, or at least inside. Harry stood up and pulled on his clothes. He felt tired, as if his body had done hard exercise the day before. But he also felt refreshed. Everything felt and looked new. He was a wizard. Today was his first whole day knowing that fact. With only a glance out the window to catalogue the time of day, late morning, he began to head downstairs. Silence descended when he entered the dining room, and Harry unconsciously hunched his shoulders to make himself look smaller, less noticeable as his heartbeat began to race. It was a habit born out of years trying to keep his cousin and his gang from playing Harry hunting. Care smiled at him, and the slightly worried looks the others had been sporting disappeared. Harry gave him a weak smile in return. I'm glad to see you are all right. We weren't sure, at first. Care said. Harry shuffled his feet. What happened? I don't remember much after that third time. You made your wings disappear, completely. However, you were really out of it for a while there. You didn't hear a word I was saying, and then you just closed your eyes and folded to the floor. Well, more like, I don't know, floated. It was really weird. Harry made a non-committal sound, his gaze drifting back towards his feet. He was still not quite used to the weight of so many eyes upon him. He glanced over the food left on the table, suddenly starving, and glanced at the others uncertainly. Mr. Steele gestured forward with a smile, before nodding to himself and beginning to speak. While you dig in there, Harry, I'm going to speak. Once I'm done, you all can ask questions. He waited a second for any comments, but the only sound was the soft slide of the chair that Harry pulled, and later of the faintest scrape of fork on plate. Harry had always been a quiet one, but it was pronounced now. The others had nothing to say yet. Care was right last night. The wizards will be back for Harry to take him to some school of training. They do not let magic-affiliated humans wander free. This seems to take place on the birthday of the young child that occurs before the start of a school term. The exact birthday, however, I do not know. It could be 10 or 11 or 12. With that in mind, we need to get prepared. Harry himself needs to learn as much as he can. I will help him in this area. The rest of you will begin a plan of defense. I am not sure how prospective students are contacted. Letters would probably be more common. But surely someone will also come and visit. We must be prepared for this. Mr. Steele looked around at all of them, pausing for a second before continuing. We will need to relocate. Surprised sounds begin to bubble forth, with Harry only contributing with a curious glance and nothing more, but Mr. Steele did not pause. It is too crowded here in the city. This suited our purposes before, but now it has changed. Harry must have some freedom to go outside, away from people, once he has his problem under control. We will be moving to the country. I have a small house out there. We shall not be noticed. We will go over the details later. I know this is hard to understand, but everything we have been working for is beginning to bear fruit. Harry will be able to infiltrate this society easily. He will have access to wizarding materials at any time. However, we have never been sure what the motives of this group are, if they are violent towards us. We must be prepared. I have seen signs of... Well, he paused. Everyone was watching him with rapt attention. When he spoke again, his expression was grim. Many wizards do not like normal people. They have words for us. They even have derogatory words for Harry here because his parents were not wizards. I do not know how we will be received or what the attitude is towards the normal family of a wizarding child. We must prepare quickly. They could come in just half a year. Care and Mike began talking excitedly all at once. They talked of things they could do, things they couldn't do. Tiny just sat there, lost. Harry had a feeling they were all a little lost, even Mr. Steele, out of their depth. Harry looked across the room and met the smiling eyes of Mr. Steele. He took a deep breath. Again, Harry, let's work on speed. Harry concentrated, barely closing his eyes before the wings again burst from his back. The itch, always there, would turn into a slow burn, then a short burst of agony as the wings ripped forth. It was just a week from the time he had collapsed. Now Harry could bring the wings in and out like it was second nature. It had been hard at first, but never like the first time. He did not have to concentrate on the magic flowing through his body or wings. Instead, a force of will and a thought, and the magic responded. It was glorious. They had been working all week on finding out the possibilities of the wings as well as the limitations. It had been harder at first and more tiring. But it was as if every time he spread his wings, so to speak, the action became easier, like working a muscle which grew stronger over time. Harry could bring the wings forth and call them back. He could not make them smaller, despite an entire day dedicated to the task. He could make them soft as satin and hard as steel. He could not change their color. Together, he and Mr. Steele had gone through a veritable checklist of the possibilities. He could pull out a feather, but it hurt like hell. The feather would disappear once his wings were drawn back into his body. A feather, once plucked, could cut through solid rock or be as soft as, well, a feather. Harry smiled to himself. He couldn't wait to truly stretch his wings out in the open, to try to fly. It was the only things they had left to test, really. He could barely contain his excitement. Stand on the scale, Harry. Okay, now step off. Draw them in. Yes, hop back up there. Harry followed Steele's directives easily. Okay, you are still much lighter even without the wings. Good, okay, must be hollow. Mr. Steele kept mumbling to himself, writing on a clipboard. Harry sighed with impatience, but he still humored the old man. Bring them out again, okay, stretch. Stretch them wide. When Harry bounced up the stairs towards his bedroom, he was abruptly grabbed and yanked inside another room. What? Shut it, Mike's voice grumbled, before he abruptly flung Harry down on his bed. He stared up at Mike, flabbergasted. What on earth is wrong with him? Harry thought, more than a little worried now. It did not help with his nervousness that Mike was much taller than he was. At least he plays fair and one-on-one, Harry thought uneasily, unlike Dudley. Just shut up and let me speak. I do not like you. As if that was a surprise, Harry thought. Stop thinking, too. It makes me like you even less. I don't like how you are now, somehow, the star of the show. I haven't liked you since I first laid eyes on your brown-nosing little face. I don't like how freaking bloody happy you are about being magical. I hate your guts. Right, Harry thought uneasily. None of what Mike said was exactly news, so the reason for the uneasiness at the pit of Harry's stomach was about what would come next. Was there a point to this? Mike was still glaring at him, while Harry stood as carefully still as he could, alert for the slightest sign of movement, for any fist thrown. I hate you because you remind me of myself. Mike said, "What?" Harry gasped. The signs of surprise must have shown on his face. Mike suddenly sat down with a puff of air. He sighed and his shoulders slumped. "Don't look so shocked. I was just like you know. Ran away from some horrible family, looking for something great. I wanted so blooming bad to belong. But I wasn't found by Mr. Steele, Harry, not at first. No, not until much later, when I had nothing to lose. Do you understand, Harry? I was weak. You are weak. I thought good of people. I was so bloody trusting. I was a dimwit. And you are too." He paused in his rant before abruptly reaching forward and grabbing Harry's shoulders, looking straight into his eyes. There was a frightening intensity in there, but it was one that made Harry afraid for him instead of him. "I learned the hard way. People cannot be trusted. I don't know what you think Mr. Steele is up to, but he is using you. And he will abandon you just like the rest of us if you are no longer useful. You cannot rely on him to protect you. You have to learn to protect yourself." The other boy was breathing hard. Harry wasn't sure what to think and had no idea what to say. Mike was. Worried about him. "What? I know this sounds crazy. I know, but you are so much like me. Like I was, and I got hurt, Harry, so badly. I was used. I do not want that to happen to you. Not here and not in some mysterious magical world. You're going to have to learn to look after yourself, Harry. You have to. I'll help you any way I can, but I still do not like you." Well, thank God for that. If the boy had confessed to liking him, Harry might have thought he was under some spell. Steele leaned back in his chair. Harry had his tattoo under control. Things were moving forward at a breakneck pace. Still, so little time. Harry would be 10 in July, and it was almost February. They were not moving nearly fast enough if that was when the wizards came. He glanced at a book on his desk. It was bound in dark leather, its pages yellowed but otherwise whole. It had been carefully preserved, almost lovingly. The book was perhaps the most valuable in his collection, but also the darkest. Next to it sat the dagger Harry had found many, many months ago. The snakes seemed to grin up at him. It would take at least a year to implement the rituals in the book, and many more years to finish it. But as a start, well, they would start now, and hopefully the wizards would not come, and if they did, well, he glanced at the title of the book. Harry would be prepared, at any cost. All the spell books Harry had looked over required the use of a wand. He had went over them all again, a new light in his eyes. But everything he had seen was simply impossible. They required a wand, a stick of wood with magical inserts. This wand would be tailored to the individual wielder. Then, once a wand was in his possession, he would have to memorize words and movements for each individual spell. Even pronunciation was important. It didn't even seem possible to learn without hands-on, practical experience, not to mention needing a teacher to show how to perform certain movements. It was impossible to learn. He could memorize facts, names, but could not learn how. So far, all he and Mr. Steele had focused on was controlling his wings so that they could move out of the city. In his free time, he was told simply to review what he knew. Harry had always been interested in the wizards, had read the books on their culture and creatures, but the spell books. Beyond curiosity, anyway, they were just lists of facts and instructions, like a big cookbook. But he couldn't cook because he did not have the tools. Well, at least he would know the possibilities. And he would know what spells did, what colors they were supposed to be. Hopefully, Mr. Steele wasn't expecting him to be able to perform spells. Harry was sure the older man was already aware of the shortcomings. How on earth could Harry get a wand anyway? And even if he had one, could he use it? Did it have to be charged, cleaned regularly? Could it misfire like a gun? At that thought, Harry shuddered. There was no telling what an unintentional spell could do. He tried to focus his thoughts on the few books before him again. Hopefully, Mr. Steele was planning something. At dinner that night, Mr. Steele broke the news they had been waiting for. "We are ready to move. Tomorrow, I want everyone to pack their things in the morning. After lunch, we will pack up the magical things. In 2 days, we leave." The plan was laid out simple. Mr. Steele did love his checklists. The boys all looked at one another. It seemed things were moving so fast. Will, I mean, what? Tiny drifted off. He looked embarrassed. Care gave a go-ahead gesture, trying to smile. Even the older boy was having trouble assimilating to the changes. What I was wondering was, what is the new house going to be like? I mean, it is a house, right? Do we have our own rooms? This last was said in a rush. Harry has a feeling that that last question was the true one. Tiny still did not want to be alone in Harry's presence. He tried not to feel hurt. He could understand how Tiny was feeling. Oh yes, indeed, the house. Well, cottage, truly. It is an old farmstead. There is the cottage, a two-story barn, a shed, and several other things. It is surrounded mostly by woods, though there are some pasture lands. Currently there are no livestock present, though we will probably purchase some to keep up appearances. I imagine it is in a bit of disrepair, which is one of the first things we will jump on. Well, most of you. Harry here, he will have more important things to do. Harry slunk down a bit in his seat. The other boys didn't look at him, but he could feel their discontent. He wouldn't be happy either if he had to do all the hard work while another sat inside or read all day, or whatever it was Mr. Steele had in mind anyway. Hopefully it wouldn't just be reading more boring books. As for rooms, the cottage has 2 stories. The bedrooms are on the smaller size, I'm afraid. There are 4 upstairs, 2 down. Downstairs, there is also a study, living room, dining room, and kitchen. It will take a bit of getting used to, but I'm sure we can manage. The boys nodded, and excitement began to fill the room. It was always fun to go to new places, see new things. Harry hadn't said it out loud, but he had been afraid that the boys would resent leaving the city, and perhaps, in a roundabout way, resent him for this change in their life. Instead, they had all treated it as an adventure. Mike's attitude in particular had changed. While the boy still did not like Harry, he also had stopped attacking him. His remarks, while still sarcastic, always seemed to be geared towards teaching Harry something, or making him think beyond the obvious. As the noise level rose, while the boys began exchanging plans and ideas, Harry glanced over at Mr. Steele. The older man was looking right at him, and his expression was conflicted. Harry felt a spot of fear in the pit of his stomach. He was suddenly reminded that this was not a game, and losing could mean the lives of not just himself, but his new extended family as well. He wouldn't fail them. As the last box was loaded into the truck, Care stepped up next to where Harry was standing, leaning against the building wall. It had taken them most of the day to load up the truck. Mr. Steele had rented 2 fairly big-sized moving vans. Care would drive the second, Mr. Steele the first. They brought very little furniture with them, and Mr. Steele left the store well stocked. He had commented that they never knew when they might move back, and the business would be waiting for him if so. Any orders left to complete would be finished on the weekend when the rental trucks were returned. It was time to leave. As the boys loaded into the trucks, Mike and Tiny with Care, and Harry with Mr. Steele, the excitement began to dim, replaced with a sense of loss. His first true home that he could remember was being left behind, but he would still be with everyone, and that was what matters, right? Harry would just get used to the idea that home is where the heart is. Mr. Steele spoke up as they began to pull into traffic. Harry, there are some things we need to speak of. It was a plain statement. The seriousness of Mr. Steele's face renewed the sense of worry Harry had been trying to hide. Harry nodded, keeping his expression open. More and more of Mike's remarks had begun to get through to Harry, no matter how much he disliked thinking badly of Mr. Steele. He understood more now that what was in Mr. Steele's best interests might not be his own best interest. I have my own secret collection of magical artifacts, things that were too dangerous to have in with the rest, things I did not want anyone to stumble across accidentally. There is a book in that bag there. No, do not pull it out yet. The old man said quickly, his hands tightening on the steering wheel before he continued. This book is one of a few that have material that I did not deem appropriate for the others. I never wanted to show just what magic was truly capable of. Some of the things, spells, rituals, creatures, they are the stuff of nightmares. I know that the spell books you have seen require a wand. Exactly, Harry burst out before he could stop himself. The lack of a wand had been worrying him for the last few days. Knowing that Mr. Steele too had considered this was a relief. Steele smiled slightly before the serious expression once more took over. Yes, well, you are a smart boy, Harry. I have read much more material, newspapers, books. These wands the wizards used are to perform a particular purpose, to allow weaker, less smart, less hardworking wizards the ability to perform magic. Also, they help regulate magic use. There is a magical governing body. I have never been able to find out the particulars, what I would not give for a book on magical government. However, I have heard mention of certain illegal spells and of monitoring spells that could be performed on a wand. I even caught a comment in one article about how underaged wizards could not perform magic away from a magical institution. I suppose because of secrecy laws and it being dangerous. But I digress. What I have been able to put together is this. Wands are not necessary. So-called wandless magic takes much longer to perform, is much harder to do, but with work and will, it is possible. This brings me to that book. Mr. Steele gestured, and Harry carefully reached into the bag and pulled out a thick leather-bound book. It was heavy, feeling much denser than its size gave away. The pages were yellowed, but the letter clear and legible. The title was ambiguous. The Ancient Wizard, Scars and Sacrifice. Wands are, in the long scheme of things, a rather recent invention. Before that, there were staffs, swords, even magical jewelry, and before that, wandless. According to that book, the very first magical users go back to the very dawn of time. And at that time, it was only a wealthy, powerful, and creative magical human that could do anything at all. And it required sacrifice. Blood, skin, bones. The only limit was the human imagination. The spells you used were the ones you created yourself. This book is the beginning. It will be up to you to implement it. They all start the same, and once on that path, well, the rituals inside only require dedication and will, and one particular magical implement that you yourself found, a ritual knife. Harry felt himself go cold, clutching the book. A knife. Wow, that brought forth some interesting and scary thoughts. What was Mr. Steele expecting him to do? Cut off his fingers? Start cutting himself to gather blood for weird rituals? The thoughts kept coming, and Harry found it impossible to stop them. He felt his breathing speed up, panic beginning to set in. Relax, Harry. Perhaps this was not the best method to bring up this conversation. Mr. Steele said forcefully. He did not take his eyes off the road, but his head was shaking. It is all right. I swear to you, Harry, you do not have to do anything you do not wish to do. Nothing. But, sir. I don't know. Relax, Harry, listen. I want you to read that book, cover to cover. Take the next month and just read it. You can see some of the other books in my collection as well. I give us a year, give or take a month to finish this. I guess you would call it ritual, if you decide that it's worth it. Unless the wizards come on your 10th birthday, which I doubt, and all this would be for nothing anyway. Well, unless that happens, we have plenty of time. Just read and think. This is something that does require sacrifice. But with planning and hard work, it is a temporary sacrifice in some ways. Within a year, 1 year of hard work planning, blood, 1 year, and you would be so strong, stronger than ever. With that strength, these wizards will not know what is coming to them. They will never suspect. And they can never take that strength away from you, not while you are living. It was that last sentence that made Harry go cold again. Fear seemed to seal his throat shut. He nodded, not meeting Mr. Steele's eyes. Harry knew what was at stake, and not just for him, but all of them. If they failed, perhaps these wizards would not make them disappear, but one thing was for certain. They would definitely make them all forget. If Harry wanted Mr. Steele, Care, Mike, and Tiny to even remember him after the wizards took him, he would have to do everything in his power to protect them, even if that protection came from his own blood. It was a long drive to the farmstead, taking most of the day. Harry wasn't very keen on his geography, but he placed them in Somerset, not very far from a popular tourist attraction, Cheddar Gorge. The nearest village, and a fairly large one as villages go, was Cheddar. Tiny had made a few laughing remarks about cheeses before they left, but Harry was simply hoping to get to visit the gorge at some point. Maybe on his own, even, if his plans worked out. At night, of course. They pulled up. Harry's first impression was one of awe. The cottage, nestled into the countryside, simply looked like a home, a place a family could dig into and grow roots. It was definitely a little rough around edges, perhaps more than a little, but it had potential. As they piled out, Tiny made a run for the door. "I get first pick," he had gushed laughingly, before stopping at the door with a disappointed wail. It was locked. As the other boys laughed and joked, Harry stood beside the van, disquieted. He felt as if a cloud had descended upon him, the weight of his responsibility for these people. He knew, and Mike had told him more than once, that what had happened had been done to him, not by him. It was even planned. But still, with a wizard in the house, things were dangerous. And yet, housing stolen magical artifacts was not. The conundrum bothered him, and with a shake of his shoulders, he quickly walked towards the cottage, attempting to put it out of his mind. Mr. Steele slowly unlocked the door, peeking into the house. The boys grumbled, and then hooted with joy as the older man finally stepped in and out of the way. Harry went last, a thing that Mr. Steele noted right away. "Buck up, Harry, go pick a room," the man smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. Perhaps Mr. Steele had some regrets as well. Some wishes should never have been made. Harry attempted a smile and then trudged up the stairs, following the laughter. The boys were all in a group, going from room to room. Truly, they were all about the same size, and everyone had a window. Tiny finally declared for the one closest to the stairs with a nod of his head, then dashed downstairs with a grin to begin to get his stuff. Harry stood stiffly, and Mike and Care met his eyes. "I don't have a preference, Harry, if you do." Care offered, and Mike nodded along. "Which one has the best windows?" Harry tried to say it laughingly, but it came out more desperate, his voice hitching at the end. The boys seemed to catch on to that. Mike abruptly pushed him towards and into the third room, which happened to be a corner room with two windows facing different directions. "Go ahead, Skinny. Got lots of good-looking window panes. One can even be propped open." The boy sneered and then swaggered out. At least some things hadn't changed too much. A shout from below summoned them back down the stairs. "Go ahead and unpack your things, boys. The second bedroom down here will be for the items. We will need to purchase new mattresses, I saw, and lots of food and toiletries. We will take a van into town for now, and tomorrow Care and I will get the truck. We will need a vehicle to move around out here. How about a tour?" At that, Mr. Steele showed them the basic layout of the house. It wasn't exactly modernized, but it would do. It had electricity, a fridge, a heater, and indoor plumbing. That was all Harry needed. With only one shower and bathroom in the house, the boys would need to get used to sharing and a chore schedule set up. "It reminds me of the old dormitory days." Mr. Steele reminisced with a smile. The boys only grumbled good-naturedly. Harry nodded to himself. This would work out fine. Just fine, he told himself firmly. Later, as he sat on his bed in his room and stared at the first page of the thick book, he doubted. It was not until half a week later, as things began to come together and smooth out, that Harry finally got a chance to do what he had been looking forward to the past weeks: stretch his wings. All the boys, Mr. Steele included, had assembled in a clearing in the woods. A slight breeze was weaving through the trees, and Harry was almost vibrating in excitement. Finally, "Okay, Harry, bring them out," Care called from the edge of the woods, a good 30 feet away. None had wanted to stand too close, remembering well the few accidents Harry had had with his sharp feathers. With barely a thought, Harry brought out his wings, the magic flowing through him smoothly. Even the pain was becoming a normal thing. He immediately could tell the difference between being outside and inside. Even the breeze, as little as it was, created a sort of pressure on him. He was again reminded of just how big these wings were. Care had bought several books on birds and their anatomy for him, so he would have some sort of idea what to do, but nothing compared to the real thing. It was both amazing and terrifying at once. To compensate for the breeze, Harry had to lean to the left slightly, into the wind. There. Harry smiled, and then spread his wings just a little. Immediately he had to throw out his arms to steady himself. Wow, it was like trying to hold an umbrella against the wind, upside down. His wings were light, but they caught the air. That might come in handy in the air, but it was a hindrance on the ground. He brought them in around himself, reaching his center of balance as he made himself a smaller target. Okay, now what? The book had been full of ideas about how birds fly. It didn't help that every species seemed to fly different, and Harry's wings only vaguely resembled a bird's. In some ways, they were almost bat-like. Most agreed that a bird needed to either propel itself into the air or take a running leap. Oh, great. Now he really wished no one was watching. This was going to end badly. His thought was prophetic. Harry decided on a running start. The running part was fine, but when he spread his wings, he did not even get a proper wing beat before slamming head first into the ground. "Oog," he groaned, and sat up to the sound of roaring laughter. The boys were beside themselves, and even Mr. Steele had a wide smile. He could only imagine the sight he made. He signed, then found his will within himself and stood back up with a stern nod to himself. He would keep doing this until he had it. Even if it took all day, more like all week, Harry thought to himself with a pained and tired grunt. The flying experiment could have gone better. A lot better. He was covered head to toe in bruises from slamming into the ground in various painful ways. Next time, he would make sure there was no wind at all before trying. It was almost impossible to predict, always changing and whirling. The graceful soar Harry had predicted had never come to pass. No matter which way he tried to take off, he always hit the ground hard. Very, very hard. He rubbed a spot on his side with another groan. He had thought flying would come naturally or something. Maybe humans were not meant to fly, or at least only on broomsticks, he thought with a rueful smile. Finally, he found a comfortable spot on the bed and pulled out the book that he had been struggling with for the last few days. The Ancient Wizard, indeed. The book was simply full of words, ideas, and concept that Harry could hardly understand, that at times he couldn't help despairing. It was meant for not only an adult, but a knowledgeable adult wizard. Some terms even Mr. Steele did not understand. It would take the both of them to do this little project. This book was only a start, of course. Mr. Steele had hopes for Harry himself to find more books on the subject later, when he entered the wizarding world. Until then, though, they had this. This was their big, shiny, cursed hope. It was both better and worse than Harry had imagined in the van that day. He might not have to cut off any limbs, but he would have to mutilate various parts of his skin with a knife, and with no pain medication. A magic knife. Just the thought sent shivers of fear down his skin. Well, he guessed mutilation might be a bit strong, but only a bit. What else would one call cutting words, or runes, as the book said, into one's skin with a magic telekinetic knife? The introduction to the book seemed to be meant to stop anyone from even reading the rest of the book. It told of all the dangers, all the bad experiences, all the drawbacks. It told why wands were used now, instead of this dangerous method. It warned and warned and warned. And still, Mr. Steele had given Harry this book. He had looked into Harry's eyes and told him that he had a choice, knowing it was no choice at all. Harry kept reading late into the night. Tilda, review please. 8. The Dove, Descending. Author's note. See my profile for a link to the forum for this story, which has responses to reviews and extra material. Many thanks to GJ Mega for editing this. The dove descending breaks the air with flame of incandescent terror, of which the tongues declare the one discharge from sin and error. The only hope, or else despair, lies in the choice of pyre, to be redeemed from fire by fire. T.S. Eliot. Harry stood resolutely. He was ready. This was it. He unfurled his wings and hurled himself forward with a running leap, allowing his momentum to shoot himself into the air. And for one glorious second he was aloft, soaring up, a smile lighting up his face. It was much more painful to hit the ground from that height. Ah, Harry, how did it go? Oh, dear. This last was said as Harry limped in with a furious frown on his face. Who said it wasn't windy? Who said? Harry knew that he probably looked silly rather than impressive. He had nothing close to Care's commanding voice. The voice of a 10-year-old, after all, was more suited to pleading, but Harry was too cross to care. Giggles echoed down the hallway before quick feet pattered away. Harry's frown did not abate. Mike would certainly jeer and tell him to stop pouting if he was around, but Harry would have gladly taken on Mike just then, bruises and size difference and all. He was just too angry. Come now, Harry, you must learn to fly in less than ideal circumstances at some point, yes. Mr. Steele smiled at Harry's face before gesturing into the second bedroom, which had been converted into a combination study and library. Harry followed him grudgingly. He was sore and tired. He did not feel like having the talk that he knew they were going to have. It had been just over a month since he was told to read the book. It was time to make his decision. He trusted Mr. Steele. He knew that he only wanted to do the best by them. But is what's best for yourself what is best for Mr. Steele? That voice sounded a lot like Mike. He tried to put it out of his mind. He had realized after a while that the everyone in the Steele wings are his family. Even Mike was still better to him than any of the Dursleys. You do what you can for your family, Harry decided, and this was something Harry could do. I know that you finished the book. Tell me what you think. That wasn't quite what Harry had expected. He had thought there would be more speeches, more convincing arguments in favor of the wandless method. He hadn't expected a simple, straightforward question, or perhaps it wasn't so straightforward. Harry racked his brain, trying to think of something concrete to say. I think I can do it. I mean, I don't want to, not really, but I can, if I need to. I know this is not coming out right. Harry scratched the back of his neck, leaning against a shelf. Mr. Steele merely sat patiently, as if he had all the time in the world. Harry knew differently, knew they were fighting against the clock, who knew how much time they really had. This last thought spurred him forward. I'm going to do it, Mr. Steele. I'm going to do it, because it might mean we have a chance. A chance to keep our memories, to protect ourselves, to stand against the wizards. And they might not be evil, they might not mean harm, they might just be nice people. And if that is the case, then it's still okay. I can live with this. Looking like this. I can live with it. I can do it. The last came out forcefully in one breath of air. Harry felt Mr. Steele's eyes heavy on him, and he met them without fear. He was certain, and now that he had said it, it felt like a weight was gone from his shoulders. He had made his decision. Now it was time to live with it. As he sat down at the desk with Mr. Steele, the book open between them, he did not allow himself to doubt. The book was specific in some ways and hopelessly vague in others. The history section was helpful, but only by so much. It all came down to magic, of course, and blood. It seemed a wand was able to channel magic because of the magical core within the wood. This magic could last for decades, or only a few years, depending on the strength of the core and the skill of the wand maker. Wandless magic, on the other hand, relied on the user only, and a wizard only had a finite amount of magic. By using some of it to simply channel, the user had even less magic at his disposal. To compensate for this, ancient wizards had developed a hodgepodge runic system that, when carved upon the skin, made the magic of the user follow certain pre-prescribed patterns. Even this, however, would not work if it were not for the very first rune that all ancient wizards carved upon themselves. The Ankh. It was actually an Egyptian symbol. The book speculated that the runic practice must have started in ancient Egypt, which would also explain the millions of magical artifacts still being found there. When Harry had looked up the Ankh symbol in normal books, it seemed pretty straightforward. Eternal life, strength, health, fertility. Yikes, but nothing odd. It all seemed to come back to the magical component, however. Magic changed all the rules. When carved into a wizard's body, in the exact correct place, in the exact way, it would create something of a loop inside the wizard's magic. An Ouroboros. This would allow magic extended from the body to return in a purely magical base form, something like a boomerang. But it too came with a price. Every spell cast from that moment forth would take twice as much will. For not only was the spell going forth, it was returning as well. It would also take twice as much magic. Why the presence of an Ankh symbol was necessary was much debated by scholars, but the facts were undeniable. It was always first, and always present. The book was useless after that, however. It often described an ancient wizard's body as a piece of living, magical art. For it seemed, beside this Ankh symbol, nothing was the same. A wizard could carve any rune and language, any symbol, even a fictional one, into his body, and the results would differ per wizard each time. Some would be covered head to toe in Phoenician, some Egyptian hieroglyphics, some in spiraling Arabic, and always it was different. It could take years upon years to finish one's set or 7 runes. There were so many drawbacks. The decrease in magical power for at least a year, as the magical core was put under stress and took time to strengthen its metaphysical muscles. The actual act of carving up oneself, and always it had to be done by the wizard themselves. The pain alone. The runes had to go deep, had to pierce the skin layer completely. The deeper the better, truly. And the research, each rune added had to be carefully researched, carefully applied. Disaster could result from one misplaced rune. The wizard had to be one with their magic, had to know every flicker of magic present within the body, had to truly be willing. The work was endless. Harry never would have considered it. No sane wizard would. Even the book itself praised the recent advances in wand magic, because such drastic measures were not required. With a wand, any little thing could be done. Millions of spells could be practiced with only one implement. With runes, the rules were different. Each rune only had one specific purpose, and that purpose could not be changed after the fact. A mistake made was a mistake that would have to be lived with the rest of the wizard's life. However, if it worked, Harry would have the potential to have defenses that would require no spell to activate. He could defend his mind from outside forces. The runes would be active unless they are literally cut off, and often even that would not remove the magical imprint. His magic would eventually come back to full strength, and then only increase with every spell cast. It would only be a matter of time, if they had that time. No known wizard still practiced this method. It was deemed too risky, with too high a cost. Harry would be the only one of his kind, and this would give him a great advantage over the average wizard. They needed to start now. Mr. Steele wanted 1 rune a month at least. One set consisted of 7 interlinked runes, which meant it would take at least 7 months to complete the first phase. They had so much to work out, though. Mr. Steele suggested they make a list of the things that Harry most wanted to protect. His mind, obviously. They considered their greatest threat to be the memory-erasing spell. Another big one for Harry was being able to see through magical forms of disguise. It would be important to know if the wizards were coming under some sort of invisibility spell. The list went on and on from there. It was Mr. Steele who first mentioned the scar Harry had on his forehead. Why not work with what they already had? What language, though? For heaven's sake, this book has every single one in the world. Chinese, Arabic, ancient Mayan, Indian, even weird African dialects. Harry put his head in his hands. He could feel a headache coming on, and it was already getting late into the night. From what I can see, it doesn't matter. It's the placement and the will that decides the effectiveness of the rune. According to it, the only reason Latin words are used in wand spells is to provide structure. Other cultures have spells in their own languages, some even overlap in purpose. However, by having a certain word in motion, accidental spells become much less common. Though there's a note that the older the language, the more meaning. Power behind the rune. No, that's not quite the way it is worded. It said ancient languages proscribe more weight and power to the runes inscribed, both because of the innate power of century-old usage, blah, 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 and because of the specific meaning behind the rune. This book makes no sense. It tells you one thing, then proceeds to tell you why what it just said isn't true. Arg. Indeed. Mr. Steele was looking hard at the page in front of it, obviously thinking more than reading. I suppose we need to just decide. Harry Egyptian would seem an easy choice, seeing as the Ankh symbol would already be present. I'm sorry, but please no. I mean, I don't want silly hands and birds and crap inscribed all over my body. Let's just please at least make it look cool. You know. Since it's permanent and all. Mr. Steele tried to look disapproving, but a smile tugged unwillingly at the side of his mouth. Yes, I guess I can see what you mean. Well, there are many other ancient languages. Chinese. Absolutely not. There is no way I could pull off all those fancy squiggles. Okay, Mayan. Too blocky. Enough said. Well, it doesn't have to be purely one language. We can always create our own. But that would take more time. It is better to have a symbol over a word, though. More meaning infused, also less cuts. Yeah, I see your point. The silence between them stretched. It seemed like such a big decision to Harry. It would be permanent forever. He didn't want to get this wrong. Well, we are running out of options. Sanskrit, Aramaic, Akkadian, Hittite, Gaulish. Harry gave him a blank look. I don't even know what half of those look like. Harry, bloody. A long sigh. Harry couldn't help but twitch at the flicker of disappointment that passed Mr. Steele's face, no matter how fast it disappeared. It doesn't matter what it looks like, exactly. Just that you will it, Mr. Steele said. If I'm going to have to will it, then it would help if I want it, I'm just saying. Harry's hands were slightly damp from sweat. I understand. Look, I have an idea. Here. Mr. Steele pulled out a sheet and passed it over. It was a list of the Sumerian alphabet. Letter M was circled, and the symbol besides it looked like a squiggle with a long tail attached. What do you see? Was this a trick question? I don't understand. Let me help. Mr. Steele turned the page 60 degrees. Now the squiggle was facing down, the long tail looking sort of like the top of the letter T, and then he saw it. The squiggle looked just like a lightning bolt. How about this? It's a form of Sumerian at one point in history. It was the base of many other languages. Read right to left, the base form of Aramaic, Akkadian, Phoenician, and various other cuneiform-based languages. There are many different translations per letter. You can make it your own. And the language is ancient, perhaps one of the oldest known, even. You can make this your own. The last statement was reiterated. Harry could see the appeal. But the letter M, what good will that do? Mr. Steele pulled out another book. Was he already thinking about this language in particular? How long had the man been planning this? Did he always assume Harry would go along with it? It can also mean water. I know, why water? Well, water can represent many, many things. It's fluid, hard to grasp. Ah, I see your mind working now. Perhaps this rune could be inscribed with the will to make your mind impenetrable, in the sense that water cannot be captured or grasped in the hands. It flows around the obstacles and it can collapse into droplets or form together as a flooding wave of ocean. Harry's mind was working. It was thinking furiously, actually as hard as he had ever thought. The book had been specific about one thing. No two wizards' runes would do the same thing, even if inscribed exactly in the same place, with the same purpose. Because it came down to the will. What one thought of water, another did not. It was limited only by the creativity of the wielder. So what if he butchered a language? So what if he started flipping letters and symbols upside down, writing backwards, mixing dialects and carving his freaking skin to pieces? It wouldn't matter, as long as he willed his magic to a specific purpose. He could make his own freaking language and conquer the world. At that last thought, a slightly hysterical laugh bubbled from his throat. He hadn't realized just how nervous he was about this whole process. Mr. Steele frowned and then leaned back with a sigh. It's getting late. No. No, it's okay. I'm just a little overwhelmed. I don't know what to think. I need more time. Harry was babbling now, eyes wide, as he tried to convince himself that it would really, really be worth it. Carving himself up like a roast chicken on Sunday would be worth it. He couldn't quite suppress the shudder running through him. I understand. But he didn't. For Mr. Steele, the answer was obvious. Always had been. Do whatever you can do, no matter the price. Harry couldn't help but wonder what his wife had been like, and if there was a more concrete reason that they never had kids. That didn't matter now, though, only this. Harry cleared his throat, doing his best not to sound as if uncertainty was still raging in him. How about we go over the process itself? I'll think on the language, and tomorrow we will go over design. Very well. Mr. Steele reached into a drawer and pulled out the ritual knife. It really was the dagger Harry had found months and months ago. Two snakes twined up the handle, fangs extended as they rose to strike each other. One had emerald specks darting its spine in a diamond pattern, the other red filigree that twined around it much like a DNA reel. Both were hooded. Cobras, his mind supplied. The fangs seemed to almost glisten in the light. The knife itself was normal looking, with the blade sharp to the touch. I'm sure you read the section on ritual knives. It was more a statement than a question. Harry had done more than read. He had memorized it with a feverish intensity of someone with only one purpose in life, the thought of the knife. It made everything else seem more real, more immediate. He could almost picture it in his mind, the way it would be. His heart beat faster at the thought. This is a dangerous object. Once tuned to your blood and magic, it will be yours. It is currently inactive, meaning either the previous owner is dead, or it was never used. I lean towards the former. Once active, the snakes will come alive at your touch, and only yours, if someone else were to touch it. Well, the others should be warned. This is no toy. No toy indeed. This was a tool, and one he wished was avoidable. Mr. Steele continued. The ritual itself is simple. I guess it had to be in ancient times. You will link with the knife, and the book describes writing on yourself the way you would write on parchment. Every detail must be perfect. No one else is allowed to be present, and it is better done outside, which is probably better because of the blood and all. He drifted off, probably seeing the expression on Harry's face. Harry tried to smile as he abruptly stood up. Well, that's that then. Put that away, and tomorrow we will meet again. Pretty simple, yeah. This will be a cinch. He tried not to wince at just how high-pitched his voice was. He knew he sounded like a child. A little foolish child pretending to be grown up, about to do something that only grown-ups do, and not worried about it at all. Only he was more than worried, he was terrified. He left the room at a quick walk, not allowing Mr. Steele time to say anything else. More and more he wished the man wouldn't say anything at all. He stood in the clearing again, getting his courage up for another attempt. Harry took a deep breath. No one had followed him this time. It seemed the newness might have worn off. His wings came alive, automatically curling around him to help maintain balance. He was learning. He walked and walked, around and around the clearing. He stretched his wings in every direction, learning the movements, feeling the air. He hopped forward, sweeping them up and back. Jump forward, left, right, back. His wings barely rustled as he closed his eyes and began to simply dance, letting his magic take over, feeling the light as it began to rise behind his eyelids. It moved through his body, flowing from his heart. It burned in his wings. When he came to a stop in the middle of the clearing, his wings were spread wide. He felt himself on the tips of his toes, leaning up towards the sky, and his toes lifted off the ground. The magic itself seemed to be pushing him up, an invisible hand pulling him into the sky. Harry! Bam! He was going to kill them. All the boys were getting used to the routine of living on a farmstead. Chores had been divvied up. After the first week, Care had come back with a miniature milk cow, some breed called a Dexter, and 5 chickens. It added some liveliness to their lives. Tiny was hopelessly afraid of the rooster after it chased him around the yard, and the cow stepped on Mike's foot and made it swell up for days. Miniature my foot, it's still a bloody 500 pounds. Ugh, it had taken more than 2 weeks to finish up all the small repairs. Some new shingles on the roof, fixing this door, that window. Caulking holes, hammering nails, building a chicken coop to hold the chickens at night, repairing the cow fence. The list went on and on. Mr. Steele was still going to take a few furniture orders, it seemed, as well, just to bring in some extra income. The boys had also tossed around the idea of making cheese. Apparently this area was famous for cheddar cheese, go figure, and the tourists were always gullible and willing to hash out some money for authentic cheddar cheese from cheddar. It was turning into a good life. If it hadn't been for Harry's odd behavior, things would seem almost normal. All of the other boys had noticed that Harry and Mr. Steele would disappear for hours at a time after lunch and dinner. What they talked about none of them knew for sure, but Harry always left looking either angry or afraid, and Mr. Steele seemed sad. It didn't help that Harry spent most of the day playing outside or reading in his room. He had very few chores at all. Tiny was getting jealous. He didn't like that Harry was getting all the attention. It also didn't help that Mike and Care kept whispering to themselves and would quit when Tiny walked into the room. Did they think he was still a kid? That he couldn't handle it? Just what was going on? After Tiny had snapped out a sarcastic remark in Harry's direction that morning, Mike pulled him aside. The older boy was serious as he closed the door behind them. Look, I know what you're going to say. Leave the boy alone, he's under pressure. Just shut up and listen. That wasn't what I was going to say. Mike snapped, and Tiny clamped his mouth shut immediately. I know it seems like Harry is getting all this favoritism, but it's not that simple, okay? I wouldn't trade places with Harry if you paid me. He's going to have to leave a home that he only just found to go to a potentially hostile place. It's dangerous, and it could change him forever. He might never come back, and he sees us as his family. He wants to protect us. What him and Mr. Steele are up to. It's going to be horrible for him. Haven't you seen the look on his face? The boy is terrified. I don't know the details, but, well, what on earth do you think that fancy knife we can't touch is for? Mike let the question hang in the air ominously. Tiny wasn't that dense that he didn't notice how Harry seemed to tense up at the sight of the knife, or the way his shoulders hunched as he unconsciously pulled himself inward into a smaller and less obtrusive profile. It was fear, there were no two ways about it, Mike sighed. It's not just to look pretty, that's for sure. Look, what I'm trying to say is, Harry is doing this for us, and he might not be around for much longer. We need to support him any way we can, and when the time comes, we will help him leave. The road he has to walk will take him far from us here, and who knows where it leads. Tiny felt horrible. He still didn't like it, but when Mike put it that way, it didn't help that he had never even considered what the knife was for. He just assumed it was some kind of cool toy. What on earth was Harry up to? He met Mike's eyes and nodded. I understand. I'll be nicer. Well, I didn't say that. As far as I'm concerned, Skinny needs to be brought down to earth once in a while. The boy smirked and flounced off. Tiny just shook his head with a smile. He was glad that some things didn't change. Harry knelt in the clearing alone again. It was the middle of night, and the stars glittered in the sky. It was so much like his own magic. His wings were stretched straight above him, waiting. He gathered his will and magic, allowing the light to once more take shape. This time not only in his wings, but his hands. He gathered it in, feeling his magic shrink then fill up much like it had that first night when drawing his wings inside himself. He paused. When he let the magic loose, he brought his wings down in a strong downcast, even as he pushed off from the ground. He was aloft before he could believe it, and that one leap took him to the tops of the trees. He kept beating his wings in strong, slow beats, allowing his magic to expand, helping him keep aloft. For the next hour, he simply hovered there, staring across the countryside and into the starry night. He wasn't brave enough to actually try flying anywhere, but just being able to hover here. It meant so much to him. He felt free. For a minute he was above all the fear. His problems were left on the ground where they belonged. For now he was free. Harry entered Mr. Steele's office quietly and approached the desk. "I'm going to start like you said, Sumerian, or some form of it like a mix of Phoenician and Aramaic. I like that one letter for the head, the letter M, like in magic or mind. It fits in more ways than one. I'm glad you have made a decision, Harry." He heard the words not said. About time, now let's move on. He was glad Mr. Steele hadn't said them. "I think you can manage to do both runes at the same time. If not, we will do the second the day after. For now, I just want you to practice writing it, over and over. Remember, it needs to follow your scar. We will do this on the closest new moon in 3 days. The book didn't specify, but it did say either full or new moons were usually used for rituals. It can't hurt to stick to tradition for this. I wish we had more information. But no use crying over spilled milk. Are you ready to enchant the dagger? Dagger. That sounded so much better than knife, he thought sarcastically. Harry blew out the breath he had been holding, then nodded and reached forward to grab the knife, no dagger, on the desk. He could swear the snakes were taunting him. "I guess I just make a cut, right, and say the words." "Yes, Harry." Just a tiny prick, enough to blood the blade. Blade. How many more fancy terms was he going to use for this pig sticker? Was this supposed to make him feel better? He tried to focus, to remember why he was doing this. For his family. For the other boys, the other people trapped in this scheme by Mr. Steele. It abruptly occurred to him that he felt like a victim, like all the boys were victim of Mr. Steele and his obsession. Mike was wearing off on him more than he thought. Would he ever truly trust Mr. Steele again after this? Like he did before. He remembered the ritual words. "I yield blood, I yield flesh to make this blade my own." Pretty simple. It was customary to bleed on the knife, to adjust it to his magic, to make it respond without touch. Then the words were spoken, providing a focus and target. Harry closed his eyes, finding his magic waiting just under the skin of his left palm. With the knife in his right hand, he slowly put the blade against his palm, laying it there for a second. Make it quick. The slash went much deeper than he thought it would. The blade was razor-sharp, unexpected. The snake seemed to hiss, and for a split second, as the blood welled up and spilled, he forgot the words. It seemed his magic itself pushed the words out for him, with no input from his mind. "Blood of mine, blade of mine, flesh and steel, I yield." Came out with a hissing undercurrent, and the words were not what he was meant to say. Before he could think about that too hard, the snakes came alive, curling around his right palm, hissing gleefully. He let out a shout as they both sank their fangs into his wrist. The pain was sudden, and he could almost feel a crunch of bone and vertebrae. His sore stars, jumping from his seat in fright. This was not what he had expected. As suddenly as he had been bitten, the snakes released him and looked up into his eyes. The wound healed instantly, leaving blood drying from 4 tiny circular scars. "Name us, master. Give us our name, and we will serve you in the darkest night, the greatest light, the hour before it ends." What? A name, the hour before it ends. They said their words together as if it was supposed to be one word, but he heard it as more. The book had said nothing about a name, though, or a speaking knife for that matter, or biting. A name, a name. Their hisses escalated with excitement. What on earth do you name a knife? He had dreaded this for so long. Dread. Now that would definitely be an appropriate name for this whole situation. Your name will be Giving Great Fear in Terrible Times. What on earth? He hadn't meant to say that. Before he could say anything else, the snakes hissed in agreement, their voices rising up in what was almost a song, a very snackish song. "Yes, yes, and we shall cut, rend here, strike the softest place." Their voices blended together, and Harry was at a loss. He looked over at Mr. Steele for the first time, only to see an expression in his face that he had never seen before. Fear. He was afraid of him. This was already getting out of hand. He had to find a way to get this dagger snake thing off his arm. Not now, beautiful ones. Flattery could never hurt. Now, return to your bloodless state. We will strike the softest place later. When the lowest light leaves the sky, we will meet again. Wow, that was a mouthful. Luckily, the snakes hissed in agreement, slithering out from around his hand and back to the handle of the dagger. Harry almost dropped it then and there, but had enough presence of mind to put it on the desk before collapsing into the chair. The room was silent for a few minutes. Well, that was unexpected, most interesting indeed. Yes, Mr. Steele was babbling. Harry never thought he would see the day. He nodded, looking over his left palm. His hand had bled a great deal more than either of them had expected, but the wound itself was sealed shut, leaving a straight angular scar across his palm. He looked back up at Mr. Steele, amazed. Look at this. It healed itself right up, just like the book said. And wow, did you hear those snakes, how the words sounded? And I would try to say something, and it would come out totally different. I mean, I guess it meant the same thing, but it was just a different way of saying it. And the thing bit me. Mr. Steele looked at him for a few seconds. Yes, most unexpected, but Harry, I could not understand what you were saying. You were hissing. It seems the magic in the dagger allowed you to speak in the serpent tongue. Perhaps that is why the words were not the same, as a snake would not have the same words for things that we have. Your magic must have been compensating. Well, that made sense at least. It wanted a name. I'm calling it dread, though that seems to come out slightly different in snake talk. It is very hard to talk to that thing. Yes, well, I imagine so. That was all. Where was his talkative teacher? Had seeing real, true magic bothered him that much? Do not worry about the mess. I have something for you, or rather, for that dagger. Mr. Steele reached down and pulled up a wooden chest. It was small and simple, with a decorative finish. The inside even had a plush lining. It was the perfect size to fit the dagger. Harry gratefully smiled. At least now he wouldn't have to just have the thing sitting around on his desk. Thank you so much, Mr. Steele. This looks like it was expensive. Oh, no trouble at all. I made it myself, actually. See, there is your name right on the side. Harry looked, and indeed there was a name on the side. It didn't end the way he expected. Harry Steele. He looked up quickly at Mr. Steele, who smiled. You have never told me your whole name, child. As far as I am concerned, this is who you are now. Who you were before doesn't matter. You are one of mine now. Harry smiled back weakly. Mr. Steele could probably take the lack of enthusiasm for all the pain he had to endure just now. For some reason, it sounded more ominous than encouraging. But Harry still felt touched to his heart. He belonged, truly. Mr. Steele had his oddities, but who didn't? The man loved him, loved them all, in his own way. He did not want to hurt them or to see them hurt. Harry carefully picked up the knife, his heart thudding in his ears, and he breathed a sigh of relief when it remained inactive. He set it in the box and closed the lid. It had a lobster claw-looking latch that he slid into place. He finally stood up, cradling the box. I guess I'll just go and, practice those runes, both of them, and on the new moon we will do this thing. It was stilted, but Harry suddenly just wanted to get away. He was tired, and there had been a bit too much excitement that day. Mr. Steele nodded graciously, gesturing towards the door. Harry's heart did not slow down until he reached his room and shut the door behind him. Then he saw the bloody mess on his left palm and right wrist and felt like he was going to lose his dinner. It was night again. For some reason, it felt as if he was meant to be a night creature. His wings didn't stick out in the dark, did not reflect the glaring rays of the sun. He was aloft in the same practiced leap as before, and this time rose above the trees. A slight wind stirred his messy hair, ruffled his feathers. He should be cold, but he wasn't. It was magic. His wings set a steady beat. It was almost like a heartbeat, a steady thrumming that flowed through his body and magic and through the air. He rose and fell to its beat. He angled his wings, learning the feeling of flight, learning what was up and what was down. It would not have been possible without magic. He was light as the feathers on his back in the air. His body behaved against the rules of gravity. Gravity had no hold on him as he floated, allowing his magic the joy of flight. He loved the glitter of the stars, so much like his own self. In his magic sight, he blended right in with the sky, full of sparkle and deep dark spaces in between. Before he even realized it, he had risen high into the sky. He was also miles away from the cottage. With a reluctant sigh, he turned and headed back towards home. Home, where the heart is. Only he was beginning to wonder where his heart really was. In this magical flight, being borne up on wings of steel. Tomorrow night, at this time, he would take up a knife and cut himself to the bone twice. He would start on a road he could never step off of. All this in the name of this home he had been brought into. He was still willing to do whatever it took to protect what he had. It was worth it, he thought firmly to himself. Everyone is worth it. He would not waste time on regrets. He had magic and he would have power. Things like being Dudley's punching bag were a thing of the past, never to happen again. If his cousin could see him now, he would certainly cower in fear, Harry thought with satisfaction. Who knows how different life could have turned out, what other paths he did not take. Those things didn't matter anymore. Here is where he was, and there was where he was going. Tomorrow he would be changed, for the better and for the worst. Life, though, was full of change, and magic itself was all about change. Changing the state of things, the look of things, the feel of things. He set himself into a careful dive, landing lightly 1 foot at a time, and then withdrawing his wings in a practiced move. His first true flight. He was getting better at this. Tilda, review please.